Hello everyone. So today we will be understanding book 4, 5 and 6 of The Republic written by Plato in 380 BCE as one of the most influential works in Western philosophy. It is a Socrates dialogue about just society, justice and just individual. So starting with book 4, it starts with a conversation between Socrates and his companions Glaucon, Erymanthus and others where Erymanthus raises a question that how in an ideal state some sections have all the silvers and golds and others are left with nothing. Here Socrates answers that if we follow the old path we might find the answer, as we think our guardians were the happiest man alive. But in today's time, our aim is not just to maintain the happiness and nurture of one section, but of the entire state as one. Socrates further argues that there are two evils in society, that is, wealth and poverty. He gives an example that if a carpenter has a skill but he has no money to buy the essential material resources, then he will not be able to show off his skills, and nor he would like his kids to do the same. Where when other person has all the wealth, he might become lazy and careless and will not show off his skills properly. Further on, Erymanthus raises another concern. He asks Socrates what are some virtues of an ideal state and how to achieve it. Here Socrates describes 4 virtues of an ideal state, and that is wisdom, courage, temperance and justice. Starting with wisdom, Socrates gives an example. He argues that if a carpenter is good in his skill, the state will not be represented just by his skills. A wise state is one in which each and every person's skills matters, and the ruler justly governs and understands each and everyone's skills. That is the wise state, and that is wisdom. Secondly, we have courage. Courage is holding one's opinion in any circumstances. Here he presents another example. So, when to dye a wool, the dyer first makes sure that he chooses white color first as a base so that any color would bloom in its true nature. Just as how the rulers should make sure to lay the foundation of society with justice and rules and regulations and laws, and to make sure that soldiers are learn about those laws to take the right decisions and hold on to their opinions. Thirdly, we have temperance. Temperance is about desires and pleasures. It deals with harmony also. It is also known as man being his own master. Here Socrates gives example that each person has good and worse principles itself. But if he makes sure to control over the worst principle, which are some pleasures or some desires, then he will be known as the master of his own, and that is what temperance is. Fourthly, we have justice, the most important aspect of Socrates' ideal society. Socrates argues that in each state, justice has always been there. It was us who never looked after it. Justice is the foundation of any ideal state. For example, if a cobbler is to do the job of carpenter and carpenter to do the job of cobbler, then it is not justice. According to Socrates, justice is to do the work the nature has assigned us for. That is justice for him. As he argues that state has 3 parts, which are rulers, guardians and soldiers, just as how the human soul has 3 parts, which are rational, spirited and aptitude. Rational part seeks for wisdom and truth. It is known as the ruler of soul. It controls other parts. Secondly, spirited, which works according with the rational part. It is known to express emotions in circumstances. Third, we have aptitude. It is the pleasures and desires part of our soul, which always seeks for fulfilling our desires. But sometimes rational part interfere in this part also. Here Socrates gives an example that if a person is thirsty, he will be driven towards water by the appetitive part. But if the person knows that the water is polluted or harmful, the rational part might interfere. So that was about book 4. Now moving on to book 5. So starting book 5, it starts with his companions Adeimantus and Glaucon raising a concern about the community of women and children, and how to manage the period of birth and education which seems to require the greatest care. Here Socrates explains with an example. 2 dogs are divided into he or she, or the male goes out for hunting and the female stays at home? No, right? Just as how if we want our women to be alike, then we must provide the same kind of nurture and education to women as men. Adeimantus raises another concern, that Socrates, in the book 4, you said that one should do what nature has assigned them for. And now you're saying that women should do what men are doing. How can they be alike? Here, Socrates presents another example. He says, nature has no opposition for bald man and a hairy man. If a bald man is a cobbler, can we forbid the hairy man to be one? I'm not saying that all women should be alike men. Some women are great philosophers, some are enemies of philosophy. Some possess qualities of guardians and some don't. And those women who have these qualities should be selected to be the companions of men. Another point that Socrates proposes that in an ideal state, marriages would be arranged by state, and there is no need for children to know their biological parents, so that the family ties will not interfere with their loyalties towards the state. Another question is asked by Adeimantus on how today's maladministration can be treated. Here Socrates gives an example in one word, that is, philosopher kings. He argues that philosophers are always seeking for truth and wisdom, whereas others are always looking for wealth, power. The philosophers are always curious for knowledge and wisdom, and their curiosity nature allows them to take the right decision, and they are fit to rule an ideal state. So now, starting book 6. Here Socrates is defending philosopher to be great for ruling, whereas Adeimantus raises a concern observing that those who pursue philosophy beyond their youth ends up becoming strange monsters. Here Socrates uses allegory of the ship, a metaphor that illustrates the challenges faced by the philosopher and how often they are misunderstood in society. The ship represents the state and society, and the captain in it represents the governing authority. Despite being physically strong, he is not aware about understanding the factors of state, which are rules, regulation, whereas a true pilot who represents philosopher understands and has knowledge about factors. But in a state where mutiny and disorder prevails, a true pilot is not valued. Now, another companion of Socrates, Glaucon, raises a concerned explanation of nature of good and its relationship with truth, reality, and knowledge. Here, Socrates uses sun as the analogy for good. He asks a question that what enables our eyes to see and makes object visible? The answer is sun. So the relationship between eyes and sun is used as an analogy for good and soul. Just as sun allows our eyes to see the object, the good allows our soul to perceive the wisdom and gain knowledge. So just as light and sight depends on sun but are not sun itself, the truth and knowledge depends on good but are not good itself. Now, Glaucon raises another question about the types of knowledge and how a soul can perceive reality. Here, Socrates uses another metaphor, divided line, which illustrates the world being divided into different kinds of realities. Now, Socrates defines four states of mind, which are perception of shadows, faith or conviction, understanding, and reasoning. The perception of shadows is the lowest form of knowledge, as it is properly based on illusions and images. It is the world of appearances where people mistake shadows for reality. Another is faith or conviction. It is truly based on physical objects. However, it is also not true knowledge as it is based on assumptions. Thirdly, we have understanding. This is where the mathematical and scientific reasoning happens. However, it is also not a true knowledge as it is also based on assumptions and beliefs. Lastly, we have reason. This is the true and highest form of knowledge, which is not based on assumption and images. It is properly dialectic, where the soul contemplates towards the ideal reality, where one person grasps the fundamental principle of an ideal reality. So that was about book 6.